We've all heard this argument before. It's a common statement that's really plagued the comic community for years. A lot of people have this idea that characters that are extremely powerful are automatically boring. The most frequent target of these statements is Superman, who is famous for being one of the most powerful superheroes of all time. It's an opinion that's grown increasingly more popular over the last few years, so for most of this video, I'm going to use Superman as a reference for why there's no such thing as characters that are too powerful to be interesting. The most common argument is that because a character is powerful as fuck, his fights aren't fun to watch because he wins so easily. There's multiple reasons why this is just wrong. Let's take a look back at Superman for a moment. He has super strength to an insane degree and he's invulnerable to most things. He has heat vision, freeze breath, x-ray vision, and a few other abilities. Now, take a look at his villains. Doomsday is just as strong, if not stronger, almost as fast, and just as invulnerable. He has regeneration and adaptation, meaning that when he comes back to life, whatever killed him before can't kill him again. Brainiac can't really die because, like Ultron, he can just transfer his consciousness. He's also like one of the most intelligent people in comic history. Zod is easily on Superman's level and has bullied him before. Bizarro's consistently been on Superman's level physically, and even though he's an idiot, he can give him a good fight since he doesn't hold back. The point is that most of Superman's villains aren't just people he can squash without blinking an eye. Quite a few of them give him good fights, and a few of them have beat the shit out of him before. Shit, Doomsday has literally killed him before. So how exactly are his fights boring just because he's powerful when almost all his villains are just as strong or smart? The only difference between Superman versus Doomsday and Batman versus Bane is the scale of the fight. Superman and Doomsday have the same physical difference between them that Batman and Bane have. The fact that they're both 20 times more powerful than Batman and Bane doesn't suddenly make the fight boring. It's always been a bit silly to use that argument. Aside from not making any sense, it also implies that the only thing that matters in a story is the fights. Let's switch gears for a second and take a look at Watchmen, where Dr. Manhattan is the most important character. Watchmen is a story with little to no flashy action. Well, at least the comic was. Manhattan didn't have a single fight scene in the entire comic besides the flashbacks to Vietnam, which makes sense because he's the only character with powers in the story and he could wipe everyone off the face of the earth if he wanted to. Manhattan may be one of the most OP characters in fiction, yet he's also one of the best characters in the greatest comic of all time. The most interesting thing about him is his perception of time. He experiences the past, present, and future simultaneously. This leads to confusion over whether he's capable of changing events in the future. One of his lines is, "I cannot prevent the future. To me, it's already happening." Another part of his character was his lost humanity. After John transformed into Manhattan, he began to view humans differently and his morals changed. As Manhattan, he viewed things almost completely on an atomic level. He didn't care that a pregnant woman got shot in front of him because a living and dead body have the same number of particles. He also didn't care if humans obliterated each other in a nuclear war because compared to the chaos on Mars, human life was irrelevant to him. In this case, we have an absurdly powerful character that's still very well written. In fact, it's his extremely broken powers that make him such a good character in the first place. We could look back at Superman and say the same thing. Superman's whole thing is being exactly what humanity should strive to be. A symbol of hope, someone that never gives up on humans no matter how terrible they can be. People always say that Clark having no character flaws and being a nearly perfect person is why he's a bad character, but it's pretty much the opposite. The main thing that's special about him is that even though he's nearly unmatched on Earth when it comes to power, it's never corrupted him. Look at all these evil Supermen like Homelander and Omni-Man, drunk on power and ruthless murderers. There's other factors that go into the way they behave, obviously, but one of the main reasons is that there's simply no one that can stop them right now. With Homelander, that's not exactly the case anymore, but for the first 2 seasons, it was. Dr. Manhattan and Superman are just the 2 main examples I use, but there are still plenty of other absurdly powerful characters that are well written. Thor is another example. There's others like Lucifer as well. Basically, the point is that powers doesn't have much to do with whether a character is capable of being written well. I'd honestly say that in some cases, a character being significantly more powerful than everyone else is a good thing. I already talked about Manhattan making Watchmen so much better. He was a core part of the plot since he alone was the nuclear deterrent for decades. In The Boys though, Homelander being so much more powerful than every other hero leads to the protagonist being forced to make decisions that they otherwise never would. This happens the most frequently in Season 3. Billy makes the choice to take temporary Compound V, which made him even more similar to Homelander. A big part of his character so far is how much he behaved like the man he hated at times. Back to the main point though, Homelander and Billy's relationship have been great so far because of the power dynamic. Homelander's been able to toy with Billy and torture him mentally because he knows Billy can't hurt him. That was before though, things have changed. Some might say that the only reason this works is because Homelander's a villain, but when you reverse the roles, you still have great dynamics between significantly powered characters and regular humans. Turning back to Superman on this one, him and Lex have one of the greatest dynamics in comic history, and it's all centered around the fact that Superman is basically a god and he didn't have to do anything to get there. Lex claims he hates Superman because he's dangerous to humans as an alien, but it's really jealousy that makes him resent the hero. It's ironic that a lot of people hate on Superman for being overpowered when DC's second best rivalry completely stems from the fact that he's overpowered. Now, I will admit that it can be a bit of an issue when a villain is too overpowered compared to a protagonist because it leads to a lot of bullshit and ass pulls. The villain always has to make stupid mistakes for the main character to survive because the main character is so incompetent. That can simply be blamed on the protagonist being too weak though. If we look at Voldemort and Harry Potter, that's pretty much the prime example of the situation I'm talking about. The thing is, Voldemort isn't even overpowered. The main imbalance in the power dynamic was because of Harry. Because he was, to put it as plainly as possible, a mid-wizard, Voldemort was written as an incompetent idiot at some points just so that Harry could survive. We're kind of getting off topic here. I can shit on Harry Potter another time. I think the funniest thing about the whole Superman thing is that he's not even too overpowered relatively. There's so many characters in DC that are at least on his level. Flash has embarrassed Superman a couple times before, and no one ever brings him up when they talk about OP characters being boring. Martian Manhunter is another one. It's pretty inconsistent, but he's been more powerful than Superman sometimes. It really just depends on the writer. Diana has been just as powerful as Superman occasionally, but for the most part, she's just slightly below him. It's also pretty funny when people say he has the most basic powers because it's such a stupid statement. Sit down and really think for a moment. Why are those powers considered basic? Because the most iconic superhero of all time created them and he has a bunch of copycats. I feel like a lot of the Superman is boring shit comes from his DCEU version. Man of Steel, BVS, and the two versions of the Justice League movies portrayed him as an emotionless god man, and even though Man of Steel isn't bad, it had a negative impact on the public perception of Clark. I wouldn't say the DCEU version didn't have any heart, especially in Man of Steel, but he wasn't the character that Superman should be. Sure, it's more realistic that Superman would be viewed as a god, but it's not what his character should be about, in my opinion at least. The old DC animated shows have some of the best Superman moments ever. They're almost perfect adaptations of the character. I've said for a while that the DCEU should have been built like the DCAU, and this is one of the main reasons why. One of the main things people love to say is that Batman is so much better than Superman because he's just a regular human and that makes him more relatable, but let's be real, that shit never made sense, and in fact, it's more the opposite. The only thing Batman is even remotely more relatable to humans than Superman in is power, which is obvious because Superman is a fucking alien with god powers. Even that really isn't much though, because Batman constantly makes suits that can fight gods, and he's a freaking billionaire with the physique of a Greek god. Sure, very relatable. When we look at things other than power, Superman is far more relatable to humans than Batman. The average human is nothing like Batman, and the average human actually wants to be more like Superman. Obviously not talking about the money here, but more about the way they behave, their personalities. Nobody wants to be like Batman in that aspect unless you're a complete edgelord. When people look at the contrast between Batman and Superman's past and choose to use it as a way to pretend that Batman is more relatable than Superman, it never makes much sense to me. The lack of a parent versus the love of a parent is a way to represent the reasons they became the way they became, not a way to push the agenda that one is more boring because he originated as an alien. Okay, I think that's it. I've been going on for a while now, and I think this is going to be another 10-minute one. I guess the moral of the story is, a character being super powerful doesn't automatically mean they're boring. I feel like this should be common sense, but then again, a lot of the popular opinions that go around often are pretty stupid. Now, I will say that I do prefer street-level characters. That's where the large majority of my favorite comic characters are. Daredevil, of course, Batman, there's Nightwing and Spider-Man, Moon Knight and Black Panther. There's a lot of really powerful characters like Doom and Thor that are in my favorites as well, but street-level characters are my guys. I guess that's why it annoyed me so much when Moon Knight had big gods fighting on a pyramid and shit in the MCU. Yes, Khonshu plays a role in Moon Knight's story in the comics, but Moon Knight is pretty much entirely a street-level character with a few occasional exceptions. He's out there fighting thugs and characters like Bushman most of the time. That's a video for another time, though. I can complain about the MCU's handling of street-level stuff another time. Back to the main point of this video. There's plenty of ways that super powerful characters can be interesting. In Gore's iconic comic story, Thor struggled with the realization that Gore might be right about the gods being selfish. Gods have been slaughtered for hundreds of years and no one cared because gods didn't pay attention to anything but themselves for the most part. This led to the famous Gore was right statement from Nick Fury that made Thor unworthy. Doom gets ridiculously powerful at some points too, the most famous of which is God Emperor Doom. Secret Wars has become something of a future Endgame 2.0 for MCU fans, but everyone who read it knows it's a Fantastic Four and Doom story at its core. It's the greatest Doom story ever in my opinion, and another example of how characters being insanely overpowered makes them even more interesting in some cases. We already talked about Manhattan, so I don't need to go on about that again. I think I'll get the point. I've been a Superman fan for years, so of course one of my first videos on this channel focused on him would be a defense video. I gotta convince people to leave my boy alone. There's so many concepts you could use for a character that's insanely powerful. You could go the route of the lonely man that's isolated because of his power. You could go the route of the man that loses his humanity and becomes disconnected from everything because of his power. You could go the route of the character that struggles to remain a good person after gaining unlimited power. You could go the route of the character that doesn't know how to control his power and ruins everything around him because of this. You can go the route of the character that has to learn to let his unlimited power go. You could go the route of the character that tries to do the right thing with his power, but he's never able to. I feel like most of the OP characters are boring talk comes from a lack of creativity. It's not like a character getting power erases certain tropes you can do with them. Just think a little harder and maybe you could see the vast amount of ideas you could use on an overpowered character. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. I keep saying I'm going to post frequently again, then I don't end up doing it. I'm being for real this time though. I'm going to start posting really frequently again. Once every few days type shit. New video coming soon. See y'all next time.